All right, we are live on Facebook. I'm Thomas Minert. I'm a realtor with Exit Realty North Star in Norwalk, and today I have with me Jared. Jared, you want to say hi?
Yep, Jared Nicolaisen from Key Mortgage Group out in Urbandale. Excited to chat with you today, Thomas. Talk about a few things in the news.
Yeah, so we're testing out a new thing. We're basically going to be going live on Facebook at least once a month, and we're just going to be running through real estate headlines. It seems like real estate is moving quicker than it really ever has, and there's just a lot of news to keep up on. So we just want to highlight kind of 1 to 2 articles at a time that we feel are important at the time, and just kind of talk to them about how they either directly or indirectly relate to real estate. Or Jared, you ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So the first article that I kind of pulled up and collected is how the Russian Ukraine war could affect the U.S. economy, and basically just talking about different ways. Even though it's kind of a conflict that seems like it's so far away from us, it's also very close to us at the same time. And one of the big things that they brought up is just kind of how it can make the certain markets extra volatile, and then how that affects interest rates, which Jared, you'd be a good person to talk to about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of how the interest rates are affected, a lot of it stems from the bond market. So when I say bonds, we're looking at mortgage-backed securities, which are like the traded bonds for mortgage. The one thing that we've seen the last couple of weeks is just a absolute ton of volatility because experts are saying keep continuing, stay in the stock market, but then with any type of war and uncertainty in the market, there's going to be people who back out and buy bonds. So we're seeing a lot of that right now is just a lot of up and down with rates. There's not really much consistency with it. It's pretty interesting to see. Just even today we were up at one point 20 basis points, and then now to finish the day we're probably going to be down 20 basis points. So a 40 basis point swing in a day is a lot. Usually and regularly you might see 2 to 5 basis point swing. So yeah, the rates right now especially are just super volatile.
Yeah. And then the other thing to keep in mind too is that type of stuff also affects just common prices of goods, especially
Yeah.
gas will be one of the big things that's affected. And whenever you have gas going up, you see common things like things that they would use to build houses go up. And then you would see food normally goes up too. So the more you're talking about prices of that type of stuff go up, the more you're talking about potentially first time home buyers are being more and more affected uh, in their budgets as far as that goes. So that would just make buying a first home even harder. So
Yeah. And that's one thing is, I mean, just talking to someone today, oil prices have gone up probably almost $40 to $50 in the last week. So, and it's totally due to the Russia Ukraine conflict going on right now.
yeah, and then the other thing, and it's not something. I mean, it's pretty small percent of the market as far as total transactions. But the other thing to keep in mind too is the more unpredictable markets are as far as stocks, and now we're even talking about cryptocurrency. The more those fluctuate too, the more that'll affect the luxury market as well. Is something to keep in mind too.
Yeah.
Um, and luxury markets sometimes, not all the time, can be like a leading indicator as far as trends as far as housing goes. Like, so if the
Mhm.
housing market's starting to trend down, luxury market's normally the first one you see start to go down. So
So when you say luxury market, could you get into more detail on what that is and what that looks like from, a high
you
level?
know, it would be your higher price point homes. So I mean, I would probably say like your 10 percentile homes in the Des Moines market is kind of what you would be talking about. And honestly, like the article that, and I did put it in the comment section, so if anyone wants to click on it and read it while we're talking about it too, the article, they're more than likely probably talking about even luxury markets that we would think are crazy here in Iowa. They're talking about East Coast, West Coast, LA houses that are multiple millions and stuff like that, because it's obviously very hard to get a loan with that. So you need some sort of high portfolio in stocks or cryptocurrency, or just a lot of cash saved up to buy homes like that. And that's why it affects those quicker than it would your typical median price point home.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's good. That's good to know, especially if it can be an indicator for everything else that's happening. Yeah, there's just a lot of uncertainty in this market right now due to this conflict. So it's pretty interesting to see, and it's pretty. Andrew Springer, appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree.
Yeah, oh my goodness. But yeah, no, it's pretty interesting to see how what everything that's going on in the market. Obviously, conflict is never fun to watch, but um, there's just a lot of volatility right now.
And it's interesting. I mean, we don't need to talk to it about a ton. I'm just going to say this, and we can kind of move on to the next thing that's more directly related to housing. But like, I'm getting the sense that I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, but it could go on a lot longer than people were kind of thinking.
Hmm.
And the longer it goes on, it'll be interesting to see if the markets stay like they have been the first few days of this conflict, or if it'll kind of start to even out and it'll just be kind of one of those things that the market gets used to, or who knows really what's going to happen. It's just kind of something people are going to have to keep track of day
Yeah,
after day, basically.
yeah.
So,
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, yeah, absolutely.
so the next article we kind of pulled to feature up is that rents are up more than 30% in some cities, forcing millions to find another place to live. Rising rents are expected to be a driving force in inflation this year. So, inflation is everything people seem to have been talking about like the last 2, 3 months, 4 months even. And one of the biggest things that people are seeing inflation of is their cost of good or their cost of living. As far as rents go, in the U.S., 15% rise last year, and a lot of predictors are predicting a 10% rise again this year, which is a big rise in rent, obviously. So I wanted to talk to you, Jared, to kind of talk about the big old own versus buy conversation. We bring this up when articles like this come out all the time because it's just a good thing to bring up.
Yeah.
Talk about how loans work and what the advantage of getting yourself into a home with a loan would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to start with just a story of someone that I know, who they live in a bigger city. Their rent is going from 2,400 to 3,200 a
Whew.
month. So, I mean, just that alone, it begs the question of, does buying make more sense? And then I mean, I don't think you can speak in definites when talking about rent versus buying, but there's definitely advantages. I actually have an example. If I can, I'll share my screen.
Yep.
Okay. So just looking at this, it's a rent versus own analysis. And if you can see it, if you can't see it, just comment below and I can send it out. But
And Jared,
essentially,
I believe this tool that you have, they can fiddle with these numbers as much as they want, right? And just kind of
um,
mess around with it.
I don't believe that the consumer can, but I can. So if it,
Oh, okay, cool.
as
Yeah.
long as
So,
there's a scenario, I can run it.
yeah. Sweet.
So what I'm looking at here is rent of $1,500 a month. I would say that's pretty fair. It's probably more higher end in the Des Moines area. But to get and I'm overestimating some of the housing numbers. But I'm looking, at a purchase price of 200,000 with 5% down, and then another one with 3% down. You can essentially see where the payments fall. So including homeowners insurance, private mortgage insurance, and taxes. At 200,000, you're looking at a payment of around 1,450,
Yeah.
which I would say, I mean, 200,000, that's a good first time buyer house, I would say,
Yep.
in this market. And then if you go 3% down, your payment's going to be right around 1,500. So you can definitely see how just the bang for your buck, and it doesn't take a lot of money to do it. I know I have here it's 14,000 and 10,000, but a lot of the times it doesn't end up being that high. I just want to be conservative, uh,
Mm-hmm.
to show like it's affordable, and I know a lot of the issues does arise when with having lump sums to buy a house. But in order to you can get a really nice house for 200,000 and have the same payment as rent. So look at the monthly payments here, but you can even just see how much rent you pay in 60 months, so 5 years. almost $96,000 in rent over 5 years, and then just the amount of principal and equity that you get in 5 years. So
And then
17.
this would be the time to bring up too, like what this article is kind of talking about as well, because like if you think that it's just going to raise last year and this year, you're kind of crazy. Your rents are always going to go up.
Right. Rents don't go
Whereas,
down.
yeah, whereas you buy a piece of real estate and get a loan that's a fixed rate loan,
Right.
the only thing that's going to change year over year are your taxes, and that I mean, I'm not going to say it's not going to affect your monthly payment, but your monthly payment is going to be a lot more fixed when you buy a home than it would be renting.
Right. And that's a good point to make. That's usually, I mean, the value of your home goes up. Real estate over a span of 10 years has never gone down. And it's never stayed down for longer than 10 years.
Yeah.
So even if you, I mean, if you plan on living in a house that long, and like you said, if you're in a fixed rate, your payment's not going to change, and generally your income goes up year after year.
Yeah.
So as long as none of that changes, I mean, it can be more advantageous to have a house rather than rent.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, I mean, we could talk for hours and hours about buying versus rent, but in general, like the sooner you buy yourself a piece of real estate and be able to afford it comfortably, that is probably your best move financially. Obviously, there's a lot of other factors as far as how long are you going to be able to stay in this house? Um, what does the rest of your financials look for? Making sure that you can get approved for an interest rate closest to par. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but
Right.
in general, it's
Yeah.
just a lot more predictable and it's a lot more safe move financially to buy a home as early as you possibly can.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the point that you made that I really like is comfortably. That's one thing that doesn't get talked about enough in our world is comfort, because if you're going to buy a house, there's more expenses than just a mortgage.
Hmm.
So as long as you can afford all that, I mean, and if you're still comfortable at the end of it, I mean, it's going to make sense. The numbers usually make sense.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the biggest bonuses that you'll see all the time is people talk about, well, like you'll be moving into your own place. So any upgrades that you're making, any changes that you want to make, you don't need to talk to your landlord to get those changes approved or
Hmm.
to worry about doing them without their approval. You can do them yourself. Well, you're paying for those upgrades and you're paying for maintenance and stuff like that. I mean, that does seriously need to be acknowledged.
Right.
But as long as you're buying a home that you can financially afford, and you budget in those surprise expenses and those planned expenses, it's just a great move.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct. And just like in the stock market, I mean, your home can be a financial weapon. I mean, 83% of homeowners have their biggest financial asset is their home.
mhm.
So I mean, the conventional wisdom is time in the market is better than timing the market. And that's one thing you hear a lot of people say is I'm going to wait for the market to crash. When you do that, unless and things that 99.9% of the world doesn't, you're not going to never time the market.
Yeah, and it's really hard to do. And I talk to people about this all the time, and it's we're in one of those markets that it just needs to be brought up over and over again. But every every market, I can tell you what the fair market value of that home is right now, and I can help you make that decision and that good purchase for what the market is.
Yeah.
I am not Nostradamus. I don't know what the future is going to hold.
You don't
So,
know what the future holds?
no, I can give you a pretty good idea of what I think is going to happen in that neighborhood. And then, like you said, the longer you can hold, real estate shows eventually that's going to go up. Um, but that the biggest other factor in that is you got to make sure that you're getting a house that you're going to be able to hold on to for a long time.
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think that's good info on that.
yeah. And then it kind of ties into exactly with the Ukraine article that we were bringing up too. The like just cost of goods are going up more and more. So, um, just affordability is going to become a really big concern this year for first time home buyers and making sure that they can find a home that not only that they like slash want slash see themselves living in for a very, very long time, but a home that they can afford and withstand um, whatever else will happen in this market.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
yeah. think that wraps up that article, unless you had anything else you wanted to bring up on it.
No, I think for the most part we covered both articles, and yeah, just leave it open for questions if anything.
I'm gonna leave it open for questions for a little bit while we're kind of waiting to see if anyone pops in with any questions. Jared, is there anything? I'm kind of springing this on you. We didn't plan this. Is there anything that you're kind of excited about right now, as far as anything you got going on, or just what you're seeing in the local market?
The thing that I'm excited for is, is the market is competitive. Absolutely, but this is a great time to, for me personally, to help people um, have their home become weapons and get them in the right home and help them win these deals. I don't want to look at myself only as a loan officer, but also want to look at myself as a, almost like a wealth manager, because, a home is a huge part of wealth, and get them in the hands of people who can help them in other areas. So making sure that the process is good for them. And I'm excited to really, help people out this year.
Yeah, the big thing I will point out now that Jared brought that up is two things that both Jared and I could help you out a ton with is one, just in general, keeping track of what the current market value of your home is. Reach out to either of us and we could definitely help you out with that a ton too. And then the other big asset that having a good lender like Jared with you will be in crazy markets like this. A lot of the houses people want, someone else or maybe three other people want too. A strong pre-approval letter with that offer is a really good tool to have in your tool belt when you're making those offers on those multiple.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yep. And we both know strategies to win those offers, to even go take it a step further. So, yeah, we're always going to be competitive for our clients.
cool. Well, no one left any questions, but if you're watching this later, definitely leave a comment below. And this is the only video that we're going to do, so we can definitely answer your question at a later time, or we can message you and answer your question directly like that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, Jared, for coming on with me, and I can't wait until we do another one of these.
Yeah. Till the next time.
All right, talk to you later.
Yep. You bet.